In the heart of a sun-drenched park, a lively group of children dashed around, their laughter echoing through the crisp air. Timothy, however, sat contentedly on a weathered park bench, adorned with a playful birthday hat perched atop his head. A vibrant birthday cake, with candles shaped like the number 10, sparkled in front of him, the flickering flames casting a warm glow on his delighted face. Standing just behind him was his mother, her eyes shining with love and joy as she watched her son. She leaned down, pressing a tender kiss on his cheek, her affection making him chuckle with gay. "Are you ready to blow out the candles, big boy?" she asked, her voice bubbling with excitement. As the moment approached, Timothy took a deep breath and puffed out his cheeks, blowing out the flaming candle in the 0 and 0. Instantly, the air filled with jubilant cheers from his family and friends, who encircled him, their voices rising in unison. "Timothy! Timothy! Timothy!" His cheeks flushed a bright shade of peach, a mixture of embarrassment and delight, causing him to wiggle joyfully from side to side. It was one of those rare, enchanting days where everything felt right in the world. The sun bathed the park in a golden glow, casting a warm light on the happy faces of friends gathered together. Laughter floated through the air, creating a joyous atmosphere that wrapped around Timothy and his mother like a cozy blanket. Their bond was palpable, filled with moments of love and joy, woven together to create cherished memories that Timothy would carry with him for a lifetime. But then, a blue car pulled up, its engine rumbling softly. Timothy's father, Joseph, emerged with a sense of urgency, his briefcase clutched tightly in one hand. He hurried over, clearly preoccupied, while Melanie, Timothy's mother, glanced up, her expression shifting as she noticed him approaching. In a brief moment of intimacy, Joseph leaned in to kiss Melanie, his lips brushing against hers, but instead of leaning into the embrace, she casually turned away. She took Timothy's hand, her smile warm and inviting as she led him toward the slide where his friends were already playing, their giggles echoing in the warm air. Joseph stood rooted in place, his heart heavy with embarrassment, as he sank into the solitude of a nearby bench. From the cooler beside him, he pulled out a beer, his fingers tracing the can's cold surface as he watched Timothy, who was blissfully unaware of the tension around him. The child's laughter mingled with the sounds of play, illuminating the scene like a ray of sunshine. But as Joseph turned his gaze to Melanie, who was now fully engaged with their son, a shadow crossed his face. A knot of anxiety twisted in his stomach as he wrestled with his thoughts. Memories of their 10 years together flashed through his mind, mingled with the growing unease that gnawed at him. It was as though he could see the reflection of their struggles in her eyes, now fleetingly wandering elsewhere. Deep down, he recognized the signs, the conversations he'd had with various women, whispered secrets that were now laid bare before him, like the unhidden truths seen through the glass door of their life together. He felt the pull of distance within him, a longing for something, and someone, different. Yet, the thought of letting her go was unbearable. Paradoxically, he knew he could survive without her. It was an odd sensation, this realization that he no longer needed her, but at the same time, the desire to claim her for himself lingered like a shadow. This conflict created a kind of emotional power trip, anchoring him to the family dynamics he was entrenched in. His gaze gradually shifted toward Melanie's brother, Ron. A figure woven into the fabric of chaos, Ron was a 22-year-old peddler of illicit goods, living life firmly on the edge. He had entangled himself with the Italian mafia, specifically a notorious clan known as the Chaperones. His escapades didn't stop at drug dealing. Ron also engaged in trafficking illegal weapons across the border, all of which filled his pockets with substantial amounts of cash for someone so young. It was as if he fancied himself the modern-day King Tut, envisioning a grand spectacle where people would surround his deathbed, vying for his fortune and speculating on the hidden stashes of his ill-gotten gains. Joseph didn't harbor much affection for Ron and was puzzled by his presence at the gathering. Still, he tolerated him, recognizing the connection through Melanie. As he threw a disdainful sidelong glance at Ron, he noticed him casually inserting a cigarette between his lips and striding purposefully toward a small, unassuming restaurant across the street. He knew he and Ron had something to discuss, so Joseph rose from his seat, his footsteps mirroring Ron's, though with a few lingering feet of distance between them. The restaurant, once they entered, was far from an inviting establishment. It sported a shabby exterior and lacked luxurious decor, resembling more of a place meant for a quick meal than a sumptuous dining experience. There were no frills, just a straightforward spot where patrons could fill their stomachs before heading back to the world of daily life. Ron, with an air of nonchalance, snatched the keys from the cashier's counter, twirling them expertly around his finger before heading toward the restroom. As he pushed the door open, it cracked just enough for Joseph to catch a glimpse of the dark interior beyond, leaving Joseph with a sense of apprehension about what would unfold next. Joseph walked into the dimly lit room, the door clicking shut behind him with a soft thud. The lights were off, and the air felt thick with tension, like the kind of stillness that precedes an unavoidable storm. As he moved further inside, something happened. His body was suddenly slammed against the wall with violent force, a sharp metallic pain shooting through his forehead. He staggered back, disoriented, as a silver rod made contact, leaving a searing throb where it had hit. Before he could even react, Ron, his face a mask of frustration, flicked on the lights. The sudden brightness stung Joseph's eyes, but it was the sight of Ron standing there, cold and imposing, with a gun pressed to his head, that truly made his heart stop. The weight of the weapon seemed to press into his very soul, and the cigarette in Ron's hand still smoked, the ash curling lazily in the air, oblivious to the gravity of the situation. Ron's voice, low and simmering with anger, cut through the thick silence like a razor. "You know how much money you owe me," he spat, each word laced with venom. His eyes were hard and cold, and his posture was one of a man who wasn't asking for payment but demanding it. Joseph's body was frozen, unmoving, almost as if he'd turned to stone, his breath shallow and shaky. His eyes flickered, and his lips parted, but no words came out immediately. Then, a strangled whisper broke through the knot in his throat. "I-K-N-O." His voice trailed off, barely audible. Ron didn't miss the hesitation. A laugh escaped him, a harsh, mocking sound that made Joseph's skin crawl. "You better have my money by Christmas," Ron continued, his voice darker now, dripping with threat. "Or me, and you are gonna have a very long sit down." He paused for a moment, letting the importance of his words hang in the air, thick and suffocating. Then, he leaned in closer, his breath hot against Joseph's ear, and whispered coldly, "And just so you know, only one of us is gonna come out of that room satisfied." The gun, still in Ron's hand, was lowered slowly, and without another word, he tucked it into the back pocket of his jacket. He adjusted the fabric to conceal the weapon, but there was no mistaking what had just happened. Joseph's chest tightened as he watched Ron casually glance around the room, his demeanor unbothered, as though nothing out of the ordinary had just transpired. Ron turned and walked toward the restroom door without a second glance, the soft click of the door behind him signaling his departure. Joseph stood there, his heart hammering in his chest as he struggled to regain his bearings. The room seemed to close in around him as he gasped for air, his breath coming in erratic bursts. His hand instinctively moved to his chest, gripping it as though trying to hold his racing heart in place. Sweat beaded on his forehead, and his legs shook as the adrenaline coursed through him. He felt a cold, bitter wave of terror wash over him. He had just faced death in its most tangible form, and it wasn't lost on him that at any moment, his life could have ended in an instant. As his mind raced, he realized the gravity of the position he was in. The truth of it was undeniable. He was cornered. There was no way out but two. One, he could somehow find the money, the impossible sum that had eluded him, and get it into Ron's hands. Or two, he could hold on to the one person who might give him a lifeline, Ron's sister. The thought of her, of using her as leverage, gnawed at him. But it was the only play he had left. If he could make her believe she couldn't live without him, that she needed him, perhaps he could buy himself some time. Perhaps, just perhaps, he could escape the wrath of Ron's iron hand. But the consequences of such a decision were no less dangerous. The weight of Ron's threats loomed over him, suffocating him in every corner of the room. He knew, deep down, that if things went wrong, Ron would make sure he paid in the cruelest way possible. And there was no way to escape without facing the storm head-on. Eventually, after a long moment of introspection, he collected his thoughts and stepped out of the restroom, pulling the door shut with a quiet click. He stood in the center of the bustling restaurant, absorbing the vibrant atmosphere around him, clinking utensils, laughter, and the rich aroma of seasoned dishes permeating the air. For a few fleeting minutes, he allowed himself to become lost in this sensory overload, before finally making his way back to the park, where he settled onto the familiar wooden bench. From his perch, he had a clear view of his son Timothy, who was energetically lost in play, laughter bubbling up as he climbed and slid down the bright blue slide. Nearby, his wife chatted animatedly with a couple of friends, blissfully unaware of his brief absence. Turning his attention back to his own thoughts, he rummaged through his pocket to retrieve a crumpled cigarette, its edges frayed from being bent and squished. He struggled to ignite it with a struggling lighter that sputtered out a weak flame, barely warming the tip of the cigarette. The chill in the air made his hands tremble, a stark contrast to the warmth of his emotions that had been swirling inside him. As he sat there, lost in contemplation, he felt the weight of another presence nearby. Ron still staring directly at him, their eyes locking for a brief second. It felt as though Ron could see straight through him, down to the turmoil he was trying to disguise. Despite the tension, he forced himself to act as if nothing was amiss and ignored Ron's probing gaze. Gradually, the energy of the gathering began to dwindle as Ron left the party, accompanied by a small group of friends. The evening deepened, and the vibrant hues of dusk gave way to a soft, inky night as the sun dipped below the horizon. Yet Joseph remained at his bench, feeling surprisingly at ease in the cool embrace of the evening. His gaze returned to his family, still engaged in their joyful exchanges. As a brisk breeze swept through the park, carrying with it the scent of fallen leaves, he felt a twinge of restlessness creep in. The cold air nipped at him, prompting him to rise from his comfortable spot. With purpose, he walked over to his wife and son, eager to join in their laughter and warmth, ready to reconnect with the little world that meant everything to him. Joseph glanced at his watch and said, "All right, it's already 7 p.m. I think we should start packing up our things." He noticed Melanie looking up at him, her expression a mix of inquiry and concern. "Are you ready to go, Timothy?" she asked, turning to the boy whose face was downcast, a shadow of sadness crossing over his features. Timothy felt a tightness in his chest. He wanted to linger, to spend just a little more time in the fading sunlight, even though the hour had long passed and the sounds of celebration were fading into memory, leaving only his mother by his side. With a heavy heart, Timothy straightened his small frame, like a rubber band stretching after being released, and slowly trudged over to his mother's car. He absent-mindedly pulled off his cap, his fingers running through his hair as he looked down at his shoes, avoiding the world around him, lost in his own thoughts. Melanie rose from the playground slide with a heavy sigh, her brows furrowing in irritation as she shot Joseph a frustrated look. "We could have stayed for a little bit longer," she replied, her voice tinged with disappointment. Joseph, throwing his hands up in exasperation, responded softly yet firmly, "It's already 7 p.m. We need to take him home. He's been out here long enough, and what if he catches a cold? You're not even considering that." His tone masked an undercurrent of frustration that Melanie couldn't quite grasp, unaware of the emotional turmoil swirling within him. Taken aback, Melanie stepped back, uncertainty flickering in her eyes. "I'm considering it, are you okay?" she asked, genuinely concerned. "Just take him home," Joseph insisted, his voice taut with suppressed emotion. "I'll handle the rest." He turned away, his steps heavy and childlike, as he walked off to manage the remnants of the gathering. While Melanie approached her car, Timothy plopped down on the ground beside her vibrant red truck, looking lost in thought. After a moment, she opened the door, inviting him in before taking the driver's seat herself. As she started the engine and pulled away, Joseph was left behind, diligently clearing up. He meticulously packed away the leftover cake and balloons, his movements deliberate as he took down the colorful decorations that had once brightened the park. He placed the items carefully in the backseat of his car, but kept the cake close up front, as if holding onto the last remnants of the celebration. He revved the engine of his car, the low growl echoing through the night, and set off down a road that led away from home, destination unknown. In his eyes, there was a flicker of something ominous, a shadow that seemed to linger, as though he were accompanied by a spectre limping through the inky darkness, gripping a peculiar double-headed orange. As he pulled up in front of an unusual dark blue house, the kind that seemed far beyond his financial reach, a sense of familiarity washed over him. He climbed out, cradling a cake wrapped in colorful frosting, and made his way to the front door. Producing a set of keys from his pocket, he inserted one into the lock and opened the door as if it were an extension of his own home. The interior beckoned him with soft light spilling from the hallway, illuminating the space he seemed to know all too well. He closed the door behind him and called out with exuberance, "Joseph, I've got the cake." His voice rang with a cheerful lilt, echoing against the walls. From the staircase rushed a little girl, her feet pattering against the hardwood, before she leaped into his arms. Moments later, her twin brother followed suit, barreling down in excited pursuit. Behind them stood a woman with a stunning dark complexion, her curves accentuating her silhouette in the soft light of the hallway. Her rich brown eyes held a glimmer of warmth, and her hair, thick and textured like wool, was carefully wrapped in cloth, shielding it from the heat. The children had features that mirrored his own. They bore his nose, his ears, and even his signature smile. Yet their skin was a rich olive complexion, contrasting with Joseph's darker hue. The girl's eyes were both a deep brown, while her brother boasted a striking combination of one blue and one brown eye. The woman approached, and he felt a rush of affection as she leaned in to give him a tender kiss. Her voice was smooth and soothing, reminiscent of a warm cup of red wine, sprinkled with a slight New Orleans accent. "You gave the other one the cake first," she teased, rolling her eyes playfully at him. "He had a party," Joseph replied, returning her smile with one of his own, both of them caught in a tender moment. Scarlett, the little girl, tugged at his shirt, her voice ringing high and sweet. "Daddy, look what I did." She excitedly produced a colorful piece of paper adorned with crayon drawings representing their family. "Yeah, right. I made that." Romeo, her brother, interjected with a smirk, sarcasm dripping from his words. Scarlett shot a glare at Romeo and retaliated with a swift kick to his leg. Joseph knelt down, gently pulling them apart with a firm but loving hand. "Enough, you two. Or neither of you will be getting any cake," he warned, heading toward the kitchen with the woman's hand in his, kissing it softly as they walked. In that moment, it became clear to him that this was a second family he had been nurturing in secret for years now, hidden from the world. The children were the exact same age as his firstborn, Timothy, and they not only shared a birthday but had been living this life, filled with laughter and love, for a decade without anyone the wiser. Yet, amid this joy, a haunting sense of deceit crept into his thoughts. How could he bear the weight of two lives, knowing he was playing a dangerous game with two women? Looking closely at the woman beside him, sharing laughter and joy, he realized they shared a bond he had never felt with his wife, Melanie. This was not merely a facade, it was a love that felt authentically real. Even when tensions arose, this connection repaired itself with resilience stronger than steel meeting diamonds. Their relationship offered a vivid contrast to the strained exchanges he often experienced with Melanie. Joseph had painted the walls of this home with laughter, assisted the children with their schoolwork, and embraced the unknown, glorious life they'd built together behind closed doors. Yet questions lingered in his mind, a knot of uncertainty. Would Melanie ever discover the truth? Did she already harbor suspicions, tucking them away like an unwanted gift from a long-ago relative? What had led him into such a tangled web? Though the choices he made weighed heavily on his conscience, the love shining in the children's eyes and the passion he found in Tina's gaze made it undeniable. He had taken a bite from a two-headed orange, locking himself into a life that was both beautiful and burdened.